What's up guys, Nathan here, and today I want to talk about pocket kings and the number one mistake that most people make with this hand. Perhaps you're making this mistake yourself and it costs a lot of people a lot of money at the poker tables. So today I'm going to walk you through an example step by step of the biggest mistake people make with this hand. Let's jump into it. Alright, so enough build up. What is the big mistake people make with pocket aces? It is overplaying ace flops. Now guys, we've all been there. You've been waiting patiently for your pocket kings for what seems like forever. You only get dealt this hand, I believe it's 1 out of every 220 hands. Basically doesn't come around that often. It's the second best hand in the game. We're all super excited when we look down at this hand, but lo and behold, we know the math tells us that 22% of the time, yes, 22% of the time, when you go see the flop with your pocket kings, there's gonna be an ace on that flop. Well, let's be honest, no, it doesn't happen every single time. It happens exactly 22% of the time. So we really, guys, just need to mentally prepare ourselves for this. We need to make peace with this. We need to understand that nearly 1 out of every 4 times that we go see the flop with our pocket kings, there's going to be an ace on that flop. So let's get over this. Let's, throw it aside and let's figure out how to deal with this. Let's take some deep breaths and understand it's going to be okay. All right, let's jump into the strategy. All right, so the biggest reason why it's okay those 1 in 4 times when you're going to see an ace on the flop when you have pocket kings is because it doesn't necessarily mean that they have that ace. What you guys need to understand is a far bigger portion of the time, they've got some other hand that does not have an ace in it. For example, queen jack, pocket jacks, pocket nines, maybe a suited connector like a 9-8 of spades or something like that. All of those hands hate seeing that ace on the flop just as much as you do. Now, yes, it's true. Once in a while, they're going to hit the ace, but the majority of the time, they didn't hit that ace either. This is something we need to remind ourselves and remember all the time right off the bat. All right, so we need to develop a solid game plan for how to play ace-high flops. We already looked at the math here, we already know how often they're gonna happen, and we know that most of the time, they didn't hit that board either. So how do we approach these ace-high flops? Well, I really prefer a balanced strategy of sometimes checking and sometimes betting. I think this mixes up our play. It makes us difficult to play against, whereas what a lot of people do is they just bet every single time with their pocket kings, which is some sort of strategy that I think says, I'm betting, so please fold, please go away, I just want to win the hand right now. But guys, it doesn't work that way. If they have the ace, they're obviously going to call, so it really doesn't make any sense to just throw out one of these please fold kind of bets. We want to have a strategy that makes sense. And like I said, I really prefer a balanced strategy. In this spot, let's run through an example to talk about this. All right, so for example, you raise it up pre-flop with 2 lovely black kings, and let's just pretend a regular kind of opponent calls you, one of these sort of nitty players or a tight and aggressive kind of one of these regulars that you see a lot at the smaller stakes games these days. Flop comes down with the 5 of spades, ace of hearts, and 7 of diamonds. So what should you be doing here? Like I just talked about, and I talk about this in my second book, Modern Small Stakes, as well. For me personally, in these situations, I'm checking roughly around 50% of the time, and I'm making a continuation bet around 50% of the time as well. Once again, this keeps my range incredibly balanced in these spots. These players do not know if I have the ace or not. This makes me much more difficult to play against. It lets my opponents know that sometimes I can check ace-high boards even when I have a strong hand. And I also do this when I have the ace sometimes as well, as I've talked about in other videos on this channel before. And so let's talk about the scenarios now of what we're going to do depending on our opponent's reaction to our play here. All right, so let's talk about checking first. If we check in this situation and they make a bet, I'm pretty much going to be calling in this situation 100% of the time. There's absolutely no reason to be folding our hand at this point. especially if we're up against one of those regular opponents who errs more on the aggressive side. They're certainly going to be making a bet here when we fail to make our c-bet a large amount of the time. If you're using a poker HUD, you can just check, their aggression factor, for example. I'll have links to the HUD that I use in the description below if you want to know more about that. But bottom line, guys, is that, when we check here with our pocket kings, it's not with the intention to wave the white flag and just give up. In fact, with a lot of aggressive regulars at the lower stakes, I prefer to give them the rope in this situation, to go on some sort of wild bet here with their 8-7 or their pocket jacks or whatever they want to be bluffing with here. I know that sometimes they're going to have an ace, and we'll reevaluate later on in the hand. I can be persuaded sometimes if they're going to go bet into me. I can be persuaded to fold my kings, depending on the player type as well. And the player type, again, will play a large role in that. But now let's flip the script and let's talk about what we do when we c-bet in a spot like this. All right, so we make a continuation bet here and they call us. Now, this is a situation that a lot of people dread. They immediately think, oh my God, they've got the ace. But guys, remember, once again, just because the ace comes on the flop, it doesn't necessarily mean they have it. Put yourself in the other player's shoes here. You've got pocket queens, you've got pocket jacks, you've got pocket tens. When somebody makes a bet on a board like this, you're not folding. So they could certainly have one of those hands. It is certainly possible that they have some sort of suited connector, like a 9-8, for example, which would have a gut shot on this board. I would certainly be floating in this spot if I had a hand like that, especially if I had, a backdoor flush draw. Like hand like 9-8 of diamonds, for example, is going to be a standard call in this situation for me here, especially if I was in position. So guys, the main point of this video is, an ace on the flop is going to come, 22% of the time when you have pocket kings, and we don't need to freak out about it. It's not the end of the world. Number one, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have the ace. We need to always remember that. A lot of the time, they are just as afraid of that ace as we are. And so really what we need in this spot is a robust strategy on the flop for how to proceed when we have pocket kings in this situation. And like I said, I really just prefer a 50-50 kind of strategy in this spot here, where I'm checking 50% of the time and making a continuation bet 50% of the time. And once again, it's not a white flag. I'm certainly not giving up because I check and then they bet. And on the flip side, it's not the end of the world if we make a continuation bet and they call us. Once again, we'll move on to the turn, the river, we'll play some poker, we'll proceed with the hand. Guys, we still have the second best hand in the game, pocket kings. It's still a good hand. And so if we mentally prepare ourselves for this situation and have a solid game plan, we can learn to play our pocket kings much, much better on an ace flop like this. So guys, that's one of the biggest mistakes that I see people making with their pocket kings. Let me know in the comments how you play pocket kings on an ace high board like this specifically. What is your strategy? I want to know how you play this hand in this spot. And if you guys want to catch more of my poker videos here on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed to the channels. I put these out roughly on a weekly basis. And also shove all in on that like button below if you found anything helpful in this video. Lastly, make sure you grab a copy of my free poker cheat sheet. I will leave a link to that, the top link in the description below. I think that'll really help you guys out that are playing in small and mid-stakes games particularly. Gives you a step-by-step game plan on how to play situations just like this. And lastly, I'll leave a video that I made recently right here that I think will help you guys out some more. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. This has been Nathan Williams with BlackRain79.com.